Hello and welcome to Safe Pasture. My name is Sherry Hammers and I'm continuing on in the book by Andrew Murray, The Holiest of All. Today we will be on chapter 44, Let Us Press On to Perfection. Hebrews 6, 1 through 3 says, Therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on unto perfection, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God, of the doctrine of baptisms and of laying on of hands and of resurrection of the dead and of eternal judgment, and this will we do if God permit. So he says here, first we hear what it is we are to give up. Let us leave the word of the beginning of Christ. In chapter 3, verse 14, we were urged to hold fast the beginning firm unto the end. These two expressions are not at variance. The beginning is the seed or first principle out of which the farther life must grow and expand into perfection. So he's saying it's like a plant. Don't just be content with just a seed. We need to let the seed grow onto perfection. He said this beginning as the root of all that is to come must be held fast to the very end. So he's not saying throw it away. He's saying hang on to it, but let's go on from there as well. But the beginning, as being only a commencement of something better, must be left. We need each day to learn more of Christ, to make new advances in obedience, to gain larger experience of the power of the heavenly life. There can be no healthy life without growth and progress. Excuse me. So every day we need to be making new advances in obedience and growth with God. He says, not laying again the foundation. A builder, when he has laid his foundation, when he has laid his foundation, leaves working at it anymore and builds upon it. So he's saying like a builder doesn't just build a foundation and just be like, okay, I guess I'm done. No, he doesn't just keep like working on it. He's done with the foundation and now he's ready to build on it. Excuse me. So in other words, we're not building this foundation of Christ, the doctrine of Christ, and then just living there. I saw a program years ago, and it was just a fiction thing, but it was a real picture of this. And let's see, I wrote some notes here. A woman in a small town was living on the foundation of a house that had burned down. So she was living there. She had like a rocking chair, and she pretended there were walls there, and the people in town thought she was nuts. And it made me think about like, she didn't rebuild the house. She just kind of lived there. And that's not a picture of a healthy Christian spiritual walk. Andrew says there are Christians who never get beyond the foundation, who never know what the house is for the sake of which alone the foundation is. In other words, he's like, they don't even know what the foundation's for. Like it's not just there to exist. It's there to build the house upon. And I put another little note here. This reminds me of a hiking trail that we went on one time. We passed like this foundation of a house, and it had the remains of a sidewalk and a few steps, like a stoop up to the house. And I just remember looking at that place, like wondering, I wonder what what the house had looked like and who lived there. You kind of wonder what was the story. And we do the same with the foundation God builds in us. Like we need to be building on it and not stopping there. Because it's, in real life we wouldn't do that. We'd be like, why is there just a foundation? Where's the building? Well, that's what we need to be asking in our Christian walk. Like, where's our building at? We got our foundation, but we got to move on from there. What is it to be a habitation of God through the Spirit and to dwell in the love and the power of God? I'm sorry, what it is. So we've got to see, what does it mean to be a habitation of God through the Spirit and to dwell in the love and the power of God? The writer mentions in 3 pairs, so he's talking about the writer of Hebrews, in 3 pairs, 6 points which belong to the foundation truths in which the young beginner has to be instructed. So it's appropriate to have a foundation for a house, and it's appropriate to have a foundation for a young believer to rest the rest of his beliefs on. So he says, here's the first pair, repentance from dead works and faith towards God. These are in very deed only the rudiments of the word of Christ. So repentance from dead works and faith, that's the very beginnings. And then he says, 2 points follow have reference to the public confession of faith and the connection. Then follow 2 points that have reference to the public confession of faith and the connection with the church. So the teaching of baptism and of the laying on of hands. So now we're talking public confession and connection to the church. And then 2 more that relate to the future life, the resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment. So Paul is saying these are all rudimentary truths. These are all foundational truths. Without these elementary truths, one could hardly be a Christian. But the man who rests content with them and cares not to know more cannot be a Christian as God would have him, and has reason to doubt whether he be a Christian at all. So if you're just resting content and you're just like, okay, I'm good with a foundation, don't need a house. God's like, that's not what I intended for the Christian walk. So this person needs to, if that's you, you need to be looking and saying, all right, God, where am I at with you? Am I in the faith? Am I even really saved? Those are good questions to ask. Because then you can start, if there's a problem there, you can get that fixed and move on and start building the house, the habitation. No parent is content that his child should remain a babe. He educates it to be a full-grown man. God has set before us in his word the life he actually means us to live, and he calls every true child of his to leave the beginnings and press on to perfection, to press on to be all that he has promised to make us. More God would not have us seek. With less we dare not be content, lest we deceive ourselves. So, just like he said, no parent wants their child to remain a baby forever. And God doesn't want us to remain a baby Christian forever. He wants us to grow up and grow on. He says, wherefore let us leave the word of the beginning of Christ and press on to perfection. And this will we do if God permit. His glory and power as mediator of the new covenant, writing God's law into our very heart, the infinite efficacy of the blood as opening the holiest of all to us, and cleansing us to enter in and serving the living God. These and such like truths revealing the perfection that Christ attained in his human life, into which he lifts us in his divine power, these constitute the solid food for the perfect. So again, recapping, writing God's law into our heart, the blood opening the way into the holiest of all, cleansing us to enter in and serve the living God, and all these other things. I mean, that's the solid food we have to continue to seek God for. The perfection of Christ as truth revealed becomes the perfection of the believer as a life experience. So when we delve into what is the perfection of Christ, what was it? Show me, God, show me the truth about that. As we start to delve into that, then that perfection comes to us in our life as an experience. That's amazing. All right, so he's wrapping up here. He says, let us hold fast the distinction between foundation doctrine, foundation, and perfection doctrine. So, we talked about the foundation of a house. The perfection is the building. There are truths of the beginning of Christ, which we have had in the first half of the epistle, his divinity and humanity, his substitution, tasting death for all, and his entering into heaven as far as that was typified by Aaron. In the second half, we have what is needed for the completion of the Christian life, the power of the heavenly life as it is secured in the heavenly priesthood and the heavenly sanctuary. Wherefore, let us press on to perfection. So, we want to complete our Christian life. We want to complete the purpose that God put us on this earth and brought us to the light of his kingdom. And there's work for us to do. And we've got to understand the power of Jesus on his throne at the right hand of the Father and his working through his Spirit in our life. That's what I'm in pursuit of right now. And I hope that as we go through this book that you'll join me as we continue to explore these deeper truths into the perfection of Jesus. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. God bless.